Hi guys, very good afternoon. This side Rajesh, and on behalf of RD Education Services, in this presentation, I'm going to discuss about e-invoicing system, which is effective from 1st October 2020. So basically, going to discuss what are the process and what are the implementation plan of from the government side. The 39th GST Council meeting has decided to implement the GST e-invoicing of the bills under GST scheme and the applicability of QR code to start from 1st October 2020. In the view of currently held coronavirus pandemic, however, in one of the press release issued by CBIC on 30th September 2020, the CBIC has provided the one-time relaxation to businesses by waiving of penalties leviable under Section 122 of GST Act 2017 on e-invoices issued during October. If companies issuing them obtain invoice reference number (IRN) within 30 days from the invoice date, e-invoicing is a good step in the light of Digital India initiatives. The concept of e-invoicing for India is a good move due to the volume of business transaction undertaken every day. The new e-invoicing system aims to make invoice reporting an integral part of the business process and also contribute towards removing the tedious task of invoice compilation at the end of a return period, thereby making the task of filing returns simpler and faster. It is expected that e-invoicing will curb the tax invasion through fake invoicing and also help better tax compliance. What is e-invoicing? Electronic invoicing or e-invoicing is the exchange of the invoice document between a supplier and a buyer in an integral electronic format. It is a system in which all B2B invoices are electronically uploaded and authenticated by the designated portal. E-invoices has many advantages for businesses such as auto report of invoices into GST return, auto generation of e-way bills where required. E-invoicing will also facilitate standardization and interoperability, leading to reduction of disputes among the transacting parties, improve payment cycle, reduction of the processing cost, and thereby greatly improving overall business's efficiency. Now we'll discuss about how e-invoicing process works. As per Rule 48.4 of GST rule, notified class of registered persons who have to prepare invoice by uploading specified particulars of particular of invoice in the form of GST invoice 01 on invoice registration portal and obtain an invoice reference number. After following e-invoicing process, the invoice copy containing inter alia the IRN with QR code issued by the notified supplier to buyer is commonly referred to as e-invoice in GST. Because of the standard e-invoice schema, that is e-invoice 01, e-invoicing facilitates exchange of invoice documents between a supplier and buyer in an integrated electronic format. Need to note that in e-invoice or e-invoicing does not mean generation of invoice by a government portal. So one can, with the help of ERP, one can go ahead and download or create a e-invoicing. Now we'll discuss what is e-invoicing registration portal, that is IRP. E-invoicing generation on ERP, how it works. E-invoicing ensures that a particular standard or format is followed for the electronic reporting of the invoice details. GST taxpayer must follow a prescribed format which helps the system read the output generated by another system, that is inter-system readability. Therefore, if the details of the invoices are reported as per the prescribed format, It will result in a major improvement by automation in the process of filing returns. Thus, it can be concluded that the purpose of invoice registration portal is not to generate a e-invoice online, but to only register the details of the e-invoices generated by the entities on a day-to-day basis. In order to upload details of the invoices into IRP, the invoice should be available as on JSON file. Using offline tools, or the ERP must be integrated with the e-invoicing system via API, either directly or through GSPs. In more precise word, the invoice registration portal are entities that act as a registrar and operate through a website for assigning e-invoice reference numbers to each invoice credit note or debit note. The invoice details can be uploaded onto the invoice registration portal using a prescribed mode for the purpose of either generating or validating the invoicing e-invoice reference number of the invoice uploaded. Only such invoices with an authorized IRN will be considered valid as per law. Now we'll discuss about the function of IRP. The IRP performs the following tasks: generate of hash oblique IRN for invoices. Where the invoices have been uploaded without hash, the invoice registration portal registrate the hash or oblique IRN for the invoice in the prescribed format based on the IRN parameters. Validation of hash or IRN for invoices. Where the taxpayer generates the hash for on the systems, the invoice is uploaded with the hash and the IRN checks if the prescribed parameters are complied with. D. Duplication check. The IRP conducts a check of the hash or IRN of invoice for a duplication or repetition of the comparing the same with information stored in the central depository. Digital signing of the validated invoices. All the validated invoices are digitally signed by the invoice registration portal using the private key of the IRP. The digitally signed JSON is the made available to the supplier. Now we'll discuss about generation of QR code. Along with the digital signature, a QR code is also generated in respect of each invoice by the invoice registration portal. The resulting QR code can be used to verify, print the invoice, and also to have a quick view or access on the handheld devices. This feature is specially and also to have a quick view or access on the handheld devices. This feature is especially useful for the tax officers and other stakeholders to verify certain details when they have no or limited access to internet. The following parameters will be available through QR code, and the parameters which I'm going to discuss over here it includes your GST of supplier, GST of recipient, invoice number as given by the supplier, date of the registration of invoice. Invoice value. Invoice value includes your taxable value along with your gross tax. Number of line items, HSN code of the main items, unique invoice reference number, that is hash. Sending the invoices via email. Now, when person want to send the invoice through email, invoice will be validated before sending it to seller. Offline application. The IRP will provide an offline application to authenticate the QR code of an invoice offline and view its basic details. The complete detail of the invoice would be available only after the connecting on portal integrated with GST and e-way bill system. The details of uploaded invoices will automatically be shared with the GST system, which will allow the automatic updation of GSTR1. Further detail will also be automatically shared with the e-way bill system here wherever required to make the process of creating e-way bill even simpler. The e-way bill system would only then require vehicle number to complete the process of creating e-way bill. Now we will go to presentation PPT 4, in which we are going to discuss about turnover limit. For the registered person whose aggregate turnover based on PAN in any preceding financial year from 2017-18 onwards is more than prescribed limit, e-invoicing is mandatory in that case. As per the GST, e-invoicing will provide multiple categories under which taxpayer will fill the e-invoice as per the turnover and other criteria. The CBIC has notified wide notification number 61/2020 e-invoicing for businesses with turnover above 500 CR, increasing the threshold for mandatory issuing of electronic invoices from the earlier limit of 100 crore turnover, providing relief to small scale companies. Once registered, the taxpayer must generate e-invoice even if the turnover increase for less than 500 CR in the subsequent year. E-invoice can be generated only by the supplier. The recipient and transporter cannot generate e-invoice. E-commerce operators can generate e-invoice on behalf of seller on their platform under the rule 48(4) of GST rules. Now I'm going to discuss e-invoicing in those cases where it has been excluded, or the companies those who are not supposed to generate e-invoicing. The following person excluded from issuing e-invoices as per notification number 13/2020 CT dated 21st March 2020. Insurance companies, banking companies, financial institutions, non-banking financial institutions, GTAs, good transport basically, and supplier of the passenger transport services, then supplier of the services by way of admission to the exhibit of cinematic films in multiplex screens, then SEZ, which has been notified with the help of notification number 61/2020 and NETI, Central Sales Tax. This could have been done in a view to exempt those category of supplier where the quantum of the transaction is huge or unorganized sectors, which could pose practical difficulty in issuing e-invoices. Now let's discuss about the documentation need and what would be the issue time. In this case, the documents which are required is invoices, oblique credit notes or debit notes. Then, when issued by notified class of taxpayers, that includes your registered person, B2B, or for the purposes of exports are currently covered under e-invoice. Though different documents are covered, for ease of reference and understanding, system is referred as e-invoice. The law does not specifically provide for any time limit within which e-invoice is required to be generated. However, following points are to be noted. The specified person will have to generate the e-invoice before the transportation of the goods, movement of the goods, or any other invoice without an IRN generation would be an invalid document in terms of 48(5) of the rules. This raises an question regarding the services provider where the movement of the good is not involved. Whether such person can generate the e-invoices once in a month before the filing of return. Else, what would be the periodicity? The answer lies in Rule 48(5) EBIT, as per which an invoice generated by the specified person without an IRN would be an invalid document that can lead to denial of the credit in hand of recipient. Hence, specified person issuing invoices even in cases where the movement of the good is not involved will have to be generate e-invoice before making available the invoice to the recipient. Now I'm going to discuss in detail what actually e-invoicing consists in terms of content and format. The e-invoice scheme contains both mandatory and optional fields. The mandatory fields are those that must be compulsory, therefore invoice to be valid under e-invoice standard. The optional fields are those that may be incorporated as per the business needs. The maximum number of the line item per invoice is 100. All the mandatory fields are to be filled into register an e-invoice on the IRP. A mandatory field without any value can be reported as nil. An overview of the mandatory section are as follows, which includes your basic details, supplier information, recipient information, invoice item details, document total. The e-invoice format notified is as follows. Other important changes in revised scheme of e-invoicing includes total 12 sections, which the only 5 are mandatory, and out of 133 fields, 29 are mandatory, 16 conditional mandatory. New fields added includes your IGST applicability despite supplier recipient located in some state, discount amount, invoice level, other charges, invoice level, and export duty. Export duty is a field which is extra information in this section. Some important point on the printing of invoice includes printing of QR code on invoice is mandatory. QR code can be placed anywhere in the invoice. QR code will be digitally signed by the IRP. QR code contains IRN in base 64 encoded but unencrypted. Quoting or printing of the IRN on the paper invoice is optional. B2C QR code is not applicable since no B2C invoices are to be accepted. Now we'll discuss about the process of generating e-invoice. This process basically, when I'm discussing it, do include 66 steps. So we'll discuss step by step. The first step in the processing of e-invoice is to register in the e-invoice portal. And e-invoice portal link is e-invoice1-gst.government.in. So the portal will ask you enter the GST number of the taxpayer, and taxpayer would get registered in the pre-invoice portal. The next step in the process of generating e-invoice is discussed. I'm going to discuss in detail now. I'm going to start with step number 1, which is basically invoice creation. The invoice creation part includes the seller and supplier will create an invoice in prescribed format using his accounting or billing software. It must have mandatory details. The accounting software of the supplier will generate an JSON for each B2B invoice. The JSON file will be uploaded to IRP. Now, second step is IRN generation. The next step would be generate a unique invoice reference number by the seller using a standard hash generation algorithm. Third step is invoice uploading. Now the seller will upload JSON for each of the invoices along with IRN to the invoice regeneration portal, either directly or through a third-party software. Now step 4, authentication and signing. IRP will validate the hash with JSON or generate an IRN if not already uploaded by the supplier, and authenticate the file. Upon successful verification, it will add its signature on the invoice and a QR code to JSON. Hash generated earlier will become the new IRN for the e-invoice. It will be the unique identity of the e-invoice for the entire financial year. Now go to next step 5, sharing of data. The uploaded data will be shared with the e-way bill and GST system. E-invoice downloading. The portal will send digitally signed JSON along with IRN and QR code back to seller. The invoice will also be sent to buyer on their registered email ID. Now for user perspective, I have jotted down some useful links. So one can refer these links when he is generating e-invoicing, or he do need some kind of he do have some question in his mind, so he can always refer frequently asked questions on this mentioned link. Though e-invoicing could eventually help in improving the GST compliance and curbing tax evasion in long run. The e-invoice system will help to curb the actions of the unscrupulous taxpayers and reduce the number of fraud cases, as the tax authorities will have access to data in real time. For day-to-day updates, you can refer this link goods and service tax india.wordpress.com. So thank you so much for listening.